mentioned, we're going to be covering Genesis, and specifically, we're in Genesis chapter 24 today, and this is on the marriage of Rebecca to Isaac. Okay, so that's why we're talking about Isaac. But one of the themes that we've been seeing as we go along through Genesis, and this is we saw this in our message on Adam and Eve last, actually in the fall quarter. But one of the themes that we've been exploring is that the Bible is a romance. I don't know if you've ever heard that before, but the Bible is actually a romance. With God in the beginning, he was alone and he desired a counterpart, right? And so actually he created man. What we see is he created man with the purpose that mankind would eventually become that counterpart. Not just someone to worship him, not just someone to fear him or obey him, but someone who would love him and who he could love in return, right? And so the Bible is the story of this romance, God attracting man, loving man, even dealing with every negative barrier in their relationship, right? And even at the end of the Bible, do you know what we see at the end of the Bible? It's very interesting. In Revelation 19, it says, "Let us rejoice and exult, for the marriage of the Lamb has come." So the Bible, the final scene in Revelation is actually the scene of a marriage. I don't know if you knew that, but so that's what we see. The Bible is a romance, and I don't have time to get it too much into that. If you want to hear more about that, I would encourage you to check out that message from Fall Quarter on our YouTube channel. But this theme, it's brought out again and again from multiple views and vantage points. But specifically this afternoon, we're going to see a specific aspect in this matter of Isaac and Rebekah. And this story, it's actually a little bit strange by American standards. It's certainly not very romantic by American standards. And the reason for this is because Rebekah, the bride in this story, she makes the conscious choice to marry someone she's never seen. That's what the story is about. It's not love at first sight. It's love before first sight. And so what we'll see this afternoon is that this story is actually the story of our life. It's the story of the Christian life, actually. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 8 says, "Christ is the one whom having not seen we love." And this is often why the Christian life is so frustrating, right? Because we're on a journey of love, traveling a distance we don't know how far, to marry a person we've never seen. That's the Christian life. And when we read this story, you'll notice that there are four persons. There's Abraham, the father, who in his old age desires to obtain a bride for his son Isaac. And what Abraham does is he commissions his servant to find Isaac a bride, right? And so in this story, Abraham signifies God the Father. Right. Isaac, we know from past ministry meetings, past weeks, and also from Galatians 3:16, Isaac signifies Christ as the only begotten son of the Father, the beloved son of Abraham, right? So Isaac is Christ. And the servant signifies the Holy Spirit, the Spirit. Now the bride, Rebecca, who does she signify? Well, according to Ephesians 5, and we know from past quarters that the bride signifies the church, signifies God's collective people. And on a more personal level, the bride signifies us. It signifies you. It signifies me. And together, actually, we're in the middle of a love story with God the Father having a purpose and a plan to prepare a bride for his son, and then sending God the Spirit to convince us to take the journey to marry his son. Okay? So this is what this story is about. Let me show you these verses and so that you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so this is Genesis chapter 24, verses 2 through 6. Could I get someone to read this for me? How about Andrew? Can you read this for me? Unmute, and is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Genesis, the whole verse, or
yeah, all the verses. Just
okay, sounds good. Amen. And Abraham said to his servant, the oldest of his house, who ruled over all that he had, "Put your hand under my thigh, and I will make you swear by Jehovah, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I am dwelling. But you shall go to my country and to my relatives, and take a wife for my son Isaac." And the servant said to him, "Perhaps the woman will not be willing to follow me to this land. Must I then take your son back to the land from where you came?" And Abraham said to him, "Be certain not to take my son back there."
Great, perfect. So catch the thought in these verses, okay? Abraham and his servant, they're having a conversation. And Abraham commissions his servant to find a bride for Isaac, but with three specific stipulations, okay? So did you catch the thought? First, the rule number one, what does it say in verse 3? It says, you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of Canaanites among whom I am dwelling. If you remember Abraham, he had followed God's calling to leave his father's house in Mesopotamia, and he had traveled a distance to live in Canaan, right? That's a distance of about 400 miles. It might not be too far, in today's standards, on Amtrak or United Airlines, but back in those days by camel train, 400 miles, that's quite the distance, right? Okay, so rule number one, she can't come from Canaan, right? Rule number two, it says, go to my country, to my relatives. She has to be from Mesopotamia, where I am from. So she has to be from Mesopotamia, right? And so after, when he hears that, the servant, he makes a very insightful comment. And he says, well, what if she's not willing to come with me back to Canaan? Can I then bring Isaac to Mesopotamia to meet this woman? And Abraham says, no, do not bring Isaac to her. She needs to come here, right? And so what all this means is that whoever the servant finds, whoever this person is, she has to be willing to make the journey, right? She has to be willing to go the distance to meet Isaac, right? And so for the servant, that means when he finds her, the servant's going to have a job to do, right? He has to convince her to go with him, someone she's never met, to a place that she's never been, a distance she has no idea how far it could be, to agree to marry someone she's never seen. That's quite a task, right? Quite a task. And actually, for us today, what this means is that God the Father, who desires a bride for his Son, has commissioned God the Spirit to reach us where we are. And God the Spirit, he has a job to do in us, actually. He has to convince us to make the journey. He has to convince us to go the distance to marry someone we've never seen. And actually, that's the subject of the Bible. God the Father desiring a bride for his Son, Jesus Christ, and the entire triune God working in you, in me, in order to make us, as part of the human race, a bride for God's Son, Christ, right? Okay, let's keep going on in this story. This is verses 10 through 15. Who can help me rest my voice for a second and read these verses? Phoebe and Isaac, would you? I saw you guys looking at one another, so maybe I'll pick on you guys. Maybe you guys can just take a verse each and go through.
Like alternate.
Okay, I can read like up to verse 12.
Okay.
Sounds good.
And the servant took 10 camels from the camels of his master and departed, having all kinds of his master's good things in his hand. And he made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well of the water at the time of evening, at the time when women go out to draw water. And he said, O Jehovah, the God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show loving kindness to my master Abraham.
15. But before he had finished speaking, there was Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, I'm so sorry, Abraham's brother, coming out with her pitcher upon her shoulder.
Sounds good. Yeah, it's okay. None of those people are here, so they won't be offended that you butchered their name. No, you did fine. I'm just kidding. So the servant, he has a mission, right? And he takes 10 camels and loads them up with all kinds of his master's goods. And he does this because he realizes that whoever he finds, he's going to need to convince her that his master is someone worth marrying, right? Someone worth going the distance for, right? Suppose I was the servant and I came to you as the prospective bride and I said, my master Isaac is a weakling. Poor and impoverished is he. He's sickly and desperate. Please come and make the distance. You'd probably say, no, thank you. I'm good. Thank you for the offer, strange man I've never met before. But I'm going to go back to doing what I was doing before, right? So we'll see later. This is also how the Spirit convinces us to make the distance. He's giving us something of the master's goods, right? Okay, so continue on with the story. The servant, he makes the trek back to Abraham's home country. And once he arrives, he does something very interesting. He sits by a well and he prays a prayer to God, and he says, Lord, bring to me one that should be Isaac's bride. And I didn't show you the rest of these verses, but what he really says is, he says, there's these women that are drawing water, and he says, I'm going to ask one of them to give water to me and to my camels, my 10 camels. And the first one who agrees, she's going to be the bride. Okay. And so then what happens is, in the Bible, it says, before she had even finished speaking, there was Rebecca, and she agrees to draw water for the servant and for his camels. And if you consider this from Rebecca's point of view, she came to that well with no expectation, right? No thought about what was going to happen to her. To her, this was just a day like any other, bring her pitcher to the well as she always had. Little did she know, her life that day was about to intersect with the plan and purpose of a father far away, who desired a wife for his son and has sent his servant to carry out this plan. Little did she know that that interaction would actually become the beginning of a romance that would change and span her entire life. And this is the story of our salvation also, right? Think about when you first got saved. When God first became real to you, we may have just been going about our own life with our own plans and goals like we always had. But in actuality, God the Father in eternity past had made a plan that you would be a part of the bride for his son. And he sent the Spirit there, wherever that was that you got saved, to meet you there. And so though outwardly, it might have been a Sunday school teacher, a family member, a friend, a pastor who first spoke to you about Christ. But in actuality, God the Spirit was there working within that person, speaking through that person in order to attract you, in order to initiate a romance with you that will change and that will span your entire life. And the whole Bible, both the Old Testament and New, show us that this divine romance, God's desire to prepare a bride for Christ, it's actually the meaning of the universe and the purpose of our human lives. The purpose of our human lives. And for us today, we may be just going about our business, in the midst of our human affairs and responsibilities. But God is actually working out all things. He's arranging every circumstance in our lives to bring us more into this romance with him, to cause us to love him to such an extent that we would be willing to go the distance, to be prepared as a bride for Christ. Okay, so let me bring you to the end of this story. I'll read these verses for you guys. These are just the last few verses in Genesis 24. It's actually the longest chapter in Genesis, so we had to kind of pick and choose, but I hope you would catch the thought. It says, Genesis 24:47, and I asked her and said, whose daughter are you? And she said, the daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him. And this is the servant speaking. He says, and I put the nose ring upon her nose and the bracelets upon her hands. And the servant brought forth silver jewelry and gold jewelry and clothing and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave precious things to her brother and to her mother. And they called Rebekah and said to her, will you go with this man? And she said, I will go. Okay, so the servant convinces Isaac. Remember, I was mentioning this before. The servant convinces Rebekah that Isaac really is someone worth marrying by adorning her with the riches of his master Isaac. And her response is, I will go. Actually, this is what God the Spirit is doing in us presently. And my prayer is that for all of us, at least at one point in college, if not at many points during your college years, as you're deciding how many things, the trajectory of your lives, I hope the Spirit would reveal to you something of how rich Christ is. How full of love, how full of peace, full of satisfaction this Christ is. When he does that, we realize nothing else no career, no relationship, no achievements. Nothing can compare to this lovely one. And our response is just to give our life to him, to say, I will go. I want to go this distance with you, to be there on that day in Revelation 19 as your bride, ready for her waiting husband. So our loving the Lord is not out of our own initiative. It's not dependent on our own devotion. Actually, our love for the Lord is simply a reaction to his attraction, right? Maybe we would pray, Lord, I don't know what it means to love you, but I want to love you. I want to love you more. Lord, attract me by showing me how rich you are. I hope we would all have some kind of prayer like this at some point. Okay, but like Rebecca, her saying, I will go, it was actually just the beginning, right? She still had a long journey ahead of her before she could be brought to Isaac. And so it's the Spirit's responsibility not only to call us, to convince us to begin the journey, it's also the Spirit's commission to carry us all the way. To carry us all the way until the wedding day, until the marriage day, right? And the journey, it's long. It's not easy. There are going to be many stumbles and doubts along the way. I'm sure Rebecca, as she was going along, she had these questions. Did I really make the right decision? How do I even know I can trust this man that I'm supposed to marry, right? And so, and it's the same thing with us in our Christian journey, right? And I just wanted to, as I close, I just wanted to present a few practical points to help us along on this journey. The first point is that we have to know our human spirit. It's the responsibility of God the Spirit to get us to our destination, right? But where does God the Spirit today dwell, right? God the Spirit is not just some kind of amorphous force swirling around in the sky. God the Spirit's actually dwelling today in our human spirit. And so we have to follow the leading within. The leading of the Spirit in our spirit. God as a Spirit in our spirit is leading us every day. And we need to learn to bring every decision to him. Both the big decisions, like Lord, where should I go to college, right? Shout out to all the prospective freshmen. But also this afternoon, I want to emphasize that we need to bring the little decisions in our day to him. Lord, I have all these things I need to do today, but there's a meeting later tonight, or there's a Bible study later today. Lord, what should I do? Lord, what should I do in this situation? Let me show you the last few verses that I have here. Galatians 5:25 says, if we live by the Spirit, let us also walk by the Spirit. This is walk in our daily life, walk by the Spirit. And then Romans 8:6 says, for the mindset on the flesh is death, but the mindset on the Spirit is life and peace. As we bring all these little decisions to him, he will lead us by the inner sense. If we go along with the Spirit, follow the Spirit, he'll give us the sense of life and peace. And if we go against the Spirit, if we go against his leading, he'll give us a sense of death, a sense of some kind of discomfort within us. This is how we practically follow the inner leading of the Spirit. Maybe it's late at night and you just finished an episode of that show you're in the middle of, and maybe you might get a little sense within. That's probably enough. It's getting late, right? It's time to go to sleep, so that you can wake up at a good time tomorrow morning to spend time with the Lord, right? Spend some quiet time with the Lord. Well, what's our reaction in that situation? Do we just push that feeling, that leading from the Spirit aside? Or are we learning to follow the inner sense of the Spirit? If we go along with it, the inner sense of life and peace will actually grow within us. It'll actually get stronger and clearer, even easier for us to discern. Eventually, through many such interactions, we get attuned, our heart gets attuned to the inner sense of the Spirit. And so when you find yourselves at a crossroads, we often find ourselves at, having to make these kind of big decisions, right? School, major, job, whatever it is. It's very good in those situations to ask the Lord, what should I do? But often we struggle because even when we ask, sometimes it's not clear to us what the Lord wants us to do for these major life decisions, right? Well, I would ask you, how much are you learning to follow the Spirit in the little things in your daily life? Has your heart in those little things been attuned to the inner sense of the Spirit? If we haven't been learning to sense the Spirit in our daily life, day to day, right, it actually becomes more difficult for us to discern the Lord's leading when the big things come up, right? The Spirit knows, our spirit in us knows what will encourage us or discourage us on in our journey of love, right? He's very active in our daily lives, actually leading us so that we will make it all the way to our destination. So let's learn to follow the Spirit, especially in our day-to-day lives. Okay, the second point is just a small is we need to read the Bible. Every day we need to read, even if it's just a few verses, right? The riches of Isaac are what made Rebekah willing to go the distance, right? The riches of Christ are found in the Bible. It's through the Bible that we find out how rich this one is, this one whom we have not seen, this one that we're on the way to marry, right? And so we need to read the Bible under the leading and guiding of the Spirit every day, even if it's just a few verses. This is what will also encourage us. Okay, final point before I finish up. The final point is that we need to make this journey with others who help us love the Lord more. And I want you to take a look at this last verse that I had on this slide. Could someone read this one for me? Chris, can you read this one for me? I had to call you out. Song of Songs 1:4. Song of Songs 1:4-8. Could you read that one?
We will run after you.
Sorry, one more time. It was a little bit muffled.
Draw me, we will run after you.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, perfect. Draw me, we will run after you. Now, sorry to put you on the spot again, Chris, but what do you notice grammatically, the pronouns in this verse? There's a little something interesting about the pronouns in this verse. Anything interesting you notice?
Yeah, it uses we.
Yeah, so it starts off saying, draw me, but then it says, what we would think it should be, I will run after you, right? Draw me, I will run after you. But it says, draw me, we will run after you. What we find out is that, as we're pursuing Christ, as we are drawn personally, we find out that there's actually a we that's running along with us. The me eventually becomes a we. The Lord will place us with others who are pursuing Christ also to help us along in this journey. Because the Lord realizes that the moment we are isolated, no matter how strong we might think we are, no matter how strong our dedication for Christ we might think that is, if we are cut off from one another, our love for the Lord will also die, right? And so we need to place ourselves, we need to stick ourselves to those that help us to love Christ more. And these might not be the people that you would choose according to your natural preference. They might have different interests or different backgrounds than you, but the only way we can make the journey is with companions, with those that help us to love Christ more. Okay, so that's what we're doing today. We're all on this journey to go the distance, to be the bride that will satisfy Christ and that will satisfy the plan of God the Father. And this is the meaning of the universe, and this is the purpose of our human life. Okay, that's all I have.